lovers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Degreelessness, the only channel not afraid to tell you the truth about the video game industry. I'm Shanghai Pete, and that truth, of course, is that the industry is so far past rock bottom that when we look up, we actually see nothing at all, because we're in a coffin and we've been buried alive. So, if you'd like to get freaky with the genius, the People's Champion is here to oblige. The industry, naturally, has continued its cadaverous capering in the few days since we last gathered here together, so we do have that to ridicule, plus we've got just a little more shit to fling at Sony, so that'll be fun too. Most importantly though, we have the very serious work of crushing dreams and making industry apologists cry, so let's get deep inside, shall we? First, we do need to do a quick recap of the week, which was dominated by, well, nothing I really give a shit about, but definitely some stuff we can laugh at, so let's start with that. And what better to give us all a good laugh than Stadia, the anti-consumer Google cash grab masquerading as the world's most pathetic attempt at a cloud gaming service. Over here at Degreelessness, we never, at any point, believed that this was either a good idea, or B, something anyone else would think was a good idea. And very much like almost everything that we talk about here, we've been proven right again and again. I know it seems like Google's been nailing this coffin shut for months at this point, but it appears a few of the final nails may have been hammered in. First, their VP and head of product, two extremely critical sounding positions I might add, bailed this week, though I'm sure no one would blame him. When you oversee one of the most mortifying and disastrous product launches in gaming history this side of the virtual boy, it's hardly surprising that you'd want to tuck tail and flee as quickly as possible afterwards. And as if that weren't bad enough, during questioning in the ongoing Epic vs. Apple case, when asked, is Google Stadia still in existence, Epic's head Tim Sweeney responded with, "My understanding is that Google Stadia has been significantly scaled back." Yikes. As we're all well aware, in this industry, significantly scaled back might as well mean locked in the basement until you starve to death. So, my condolences to all the regular people over at Stadia who likely stand to lose their jobs over this. It really sucks for you. No condolences at all, however, to anyone who was dumb enough to spend their money on this, though. What were you thinking? Maybe next time you'll heed the wise words of Shanghai Pete. Moving on. As you know, I've been bitching about how there haven't been any system exclusives for the relentlessly lauded PlayStation 5 since it launched almost a year ago. Well, 7 months later, Sony has finally deigned to fix that and has come down from their ivory tower to gift the peasants the very first PS5 exclusive, Returnal. So, how's that going? Well, predictably, Sony, as always, remains distressingly dedicated to perpetually bathing in the vitriol and ire of their loyal customers, and to that end had absolutely no compunctions about asking $70 for this coveted exclusive, a game that barely runs in 1080p. Now, before anyone soils themselves in a rush to comment, but I only have a 1080p TV, idiot! I don't fucking care. That's not the point, and if you take even 30 seconds to allow the few remaining neurons in your brain the chance to complete an exercise in rudimentary logic, you'll understand. The reason that I have a problem with this has nothing to do with how many people own a 4K display. Sony asked you, the customer, to shell out $500 of your hard-earned dollars for a PlayStation 5, a console they exhaustively advertised as a next-generation system, because it was capable of things your current generation system was not, and could play games that your current generation system could not. After all, if it didn't play games your PS4 couldn't, and the games it did play looked the same as PS4 games, why would you buy one? Right. Playing this game and running this mediocre looking engine at less than 60 frames a second in 1080 fucking p are things your PS4 could easily have done. Anyone with eyes can clearly see that, a fact which I'm sure will be demonstrated when they inevitably release Returnal for PS4 after they're sure they've gotten all the money they can out of the people who own PS5s. I don't care how good the game is, I don't care if you love it, and I don't give a fuck what kind of TV you have. That's not the discussion I'm interested in having. You want to have that discussion, or other substanceless dialogues about surface issues in the industry that wouldn't be out of place on an elementary school playground, you may want to go someplace else. This might not be the channel for you. The discussion I'm having is about how Sony is doing nothing to earn you as a customer and how the PS5 has done nothing to earn your money or a place in your home. For fuck's sake, guys, I'm merely asking. Hell, I'm not even asking, I'm suggesting, for all our sakes, pretty please, demand better. And speaking of demanding better, lastly, let's just briefly touch on the never-ending PlayStation 5 restocking disaster. It's just been one of the great joys of my life recently to watch this unfold over the past couple months. Part of this is a result of the global chip shortage that we've been experiencing due largely in part to the pandemic's effect on the global supply chain for semiconductors. And that's affecting everything from PS5s to GPUs like the new RTX 3090s. That, indisputably, not Sony's fault. Now, is that the only contributing factor though? I don't think so, and apparently neither does Sony's CFO, who when questioned about the supply issues responded by saying, "Can we drastically increase the supply? No, that's not likely. The shortage of semiconductors is one factor, but there are other factors that will impact the production volume as well." That's interesting. What other factors? Well, according to the usually totally worthless comicbook.com, he didn't feel it was necessary to elaborate on that. I have an idea though. Perhaps it's because you shoved a poorly tested hardware platform out the door in the middle of a global pandemic. Perhaps it's because you were so concerned with hitting fiscal quarterly profit goals, you didn't bother to stockpile an adequate quantity of your product before rushing it to market. And maybe, just maybe, it's because you didn't properly secure your supply chain in the midst of a disrupted worldwide shipping crisis with no discernible end. Could that be a contributing factor, perhaps?
I think so.
Alright, enough about that. For our main story tonight, we're going to be doing a little myth busting. This week's target is the myth that studios that have been co-opted by global billion-dollar publishers are still capable of making good games and totally deserve the benefit of the doubt. The obvious truth, of course, being that no, they are not, and no, they don't. Since clearly attempting to cover all relevant examples of this would far exceed the limitations of our non-existent budget and free time, tonight we're going to focus on just two primary examples that really typify this phenomenon across the wider industry. They also happen to have been two of my favorite developers, Blizzard and Bioware. I figure the easiest way to do this is probably just to distill the studios down to their most beloved IPs and dig into which people were specifically responsible for them and then check to see if any of them are still working at these developers. Sounds fun, right? Let us start with Bioware. Fair warning, this is definitely going to get more than a little sad. Whether your first Bioware game was Mass Effect or you've been rocking with them since Shattered Steel and Neverwinter Nights, I think we can all agree that the current state over there is, shall we say, less than encouraging. And that's being extremely generous. A less generous way to put it would be to say that the remains of Bioware are something akin to a hideous, desiccated, cadaverous husk, cruelly reanimated and forced to walk upright in a twisted parody of the human form. Let's leave it at that. At any rate, our first task is to determine what franchises or IPs best represented the essence of what made Bioware great. I'm aware that this alone is a discussion you could have perhaps until the end of time, but since we don't have quite that long, I'll take a stab at it now. While the aforementioned Neverwinter Nights series was definitely a seminal game in the development of the studio, I think it's a little too far in the past to be relevant for our purposes right now, especially with modern audiences. Same with titles like Jade Empire or MDK2. No, I think by far the series the majority of fans would identify with the spirit of Bioware are games like Knights of the Old Republic, Baldur's Gate, Mass Effect, and Dragon Age. Of course, their other titles are important and for the most part excellent, but I think these are the series that truly embody the peak of Bioware's ability. With that established, let's take a look at the people who are primarily responsible for those games. First up is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, better known as KOTOR. Who worked on that? Obviously, I'm not going to go through the entire credits for each of these games, so let's take the main top positions that are primarily responsible for the overall games and how they come out. Knights of the Old Republic's project director was Casey Hudson, lead designer was a guy named James Olin, and senior writer was Drew Karpyshyn. I'm going to say Karpyshyn, I have no idea how to actually pronounce that, but let's go with that. Cool. Clearly a talented bunch of motherfuckers. Next, let's take a look at Mass Effect. The program director for the first Mass Effect game was, again, Casey Hudson. Lead designer was a guy named Preston Wadamaniak, I guess. And lead writer was, again, Drew Karpyshyn. Mass Effect 2's lead designer was, again, Preston Wadamaniak. Project director was Casey Hudson, and lead writer was Drew Karpyshyn as well. Mass Effect 3's credits are, for the most part, pretty identical. So far, looks like most of the same people were responsible for both the Mass Effect series and KOTOR. Interesting. Now, let's take a look at Baldur's Gate next. Baldur's Gate games were jointly published by Black Isle Studios and subsequently Interplay, but Bioware was the primary developer. Principal figure here was James Olin all across the board, with lead design, writing, and even programming all being credited to him, with the sequel being mostly the same. Again, James Olin is credited as being both the director of writing and overall design. Kevin Martins was the lead designer, along with Raymond Musica, and Greg Zeshuk producing. So far, seeing a lot of similar names popping up. Lastly, let's take a look at the Dragon Age franchise. For Origins, we've got your boy James Olin again heading it up as lead designer, along with Mike Laidlaw and Brent Knowles as creative directors. Lead writer was a guy named David Gator, and the duties of project director were handled by Mark Dara. Dragon Age 2 credits are pretty similar for the most part. Looks like Mark Dara was back again as executive producer and project director, with Mike Laidlaw returning as lead designer. Inquisition again saw Mark Dara resuming his role as executive producer, along with Mike Laidlaw, who continued his role as creative director. Okay, so that's a lot of very talented people responsible for a lot of generally really fucking awesome games. Casey Hudson, Drew Karpyshyn, James Olin, Preston Watamaniuk, Kevin Martins, Raymond Muska, Greg Zeshuk, Mike Laidlaw, Mark Dara, Brent Knowles, and David Gator. That's 11 people. So, out of all these people, who is still at Bioware today in 2021, making games, helping them, ruin Anthem? I don't know. How many? One person. So before you think, I know Mass Effect Andromeda was garbage, but I think they'll do better. Or the Dragon Age series is going downhill, but I'm sure they'll fix it. Let's just keep giving them money. Ask yourself this question. Who the fuck is left to fix it? Yeah. Nobody. 11 people, all the top talent at Bioware, gone within just a few years of EA's acquisition of the studio. And before you think that, well, maybe they all just happened to leave simply because they were tired of the industry. No. Admittedly, one or two of them did leave for what appears to be that exact reason, but the rest of them all went on to continue working in the industry, just at different studios. So if you liked Bioware because you love Mass Effect, well, the people who made that game are all gone. Maybe you like them because you love KOTOR. The people who made that game are long gone too. Or perhaps you were into Bioware because you're a big Dragon Age fan. No one from that team is still there either. Are you sensing pattern here yet? I state again, for the record, with a heavy heart, sincerely, Bioware is dead, and they ain't coming back. See? Told you it was going to get a little sad. Next up, we set our sights on the consistently despicable gore festival of disappointment, Blizzard Entertainment. The IPs that make, or rather made Blizzard who they are, or were, are obvious. Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo. Major credits go to Reddit user Unbaneling, who did most of my research for me on this. And to paraphrase the top comment in the thread that I found this info in, if I had simply started by searching just for who is left instead of who's already gone, I probably would have saved myself a lot of time. So let's start there. List of who's gone. First up is a guy named Rob Pardo. If you've been a fan of Blizzard over the years, you probably already knew this, and his name was probably very familiar to you. His specific title was Vice President of Game Design, and he led development of games since 1997. Lead designer of StarCraft, Warcraft 3, World of Warcraft, and StarCraft 2. One of the first names that you'll see when the credits roll. Unlike Benson and Morhaime, this guy rarely took the spotlight, but he was undoubtedly one of the key people behind Blizzard's success. In 2014, he left Blizzard to start, that's right, his own studio. Next, we have Nick Carpenter, there at Blizzard from 94 to 2016. He was the Vice President of Art and Cinematic Development and also a co-producer of the World of Warcraft film. We don't have to talk about that. He led the team that created, I think, all of their cinematics and was responsible for fleshing out pretty much the overall look of most of their games. And where is he? He left in 2016 to go join Bonfire Studios. And who founded Bonfire Studios? Oh, look at that, Rob Pardo. Next on the list is a dude named Chris Sagatti over at Blizzard from 96 to 2019. Official title, Vice President and Senior Game Producer for all of Blizzard's RTS titles, including StarCraft, StarCraft 2, and Warcraft 3. He also served as Production Director for Heroes of the Storm. Next up is another very familiar name to anyone who's been a fan of Blizzard for a while, a guy named Frank Pierce. There from 91 to 19. He was actually the co-founder and chief development officer, one of the main people in Blizzard alongside Mike Morhaime and Alan Adam. Started off as a programmer on Blizzard's earlier titles, stuff for the Super Nintendo, total classics like Lost Vikings and Blackthorn. He also worked on Diablo and StarCraft. I'm sure it doesn't matter that he's gone, he probably had nothing to do with how their games turned out, right? And just in case you thought that maybe only one of Blizzard's founders had run screaming from the company, nope, it's actually two. Mike Morhaime joins the list there when he co-founded it in 91 and leaving in 2018. This is essentially the guy who made Blizzard great. And how have they been doing without him? Yeah. And what list of people whose departure has left Blizzard utterly crippled and flailing around amidst their own waste would be complete without the legendary Chris Metzen, joining Blizzard in 1994 and leaving in 2016, eventually holding the title of Senior Vice President of Creative Development. There's nothing I can really say about this dude that would completely do his contribution to this company justice. This guy was the heart and soul of pretty much absolutely everything that Blizzard ever did. You name it. If it had Blizzard's logo on it from 1995 onwards, chances are this dude either did most of the voice work, the concept art, the creative development, writing, anything. World of Warcraft, all the expansions, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, Warcraft Frozen Throne, StarCraft, StarCraft 2, StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm, Warlords of Draenor, Legacy of the Void. I'm seriously not exaggerating when I say literally everything that they ever did had this dude at the very fucking core of it. Beloved by both developers and actually the community, surprisingly. His departure in 2016, I can think of no better signaling risk for the death of a company than if you lose a guy like Chris fucking Metzen. They've lost a lot of very talented and awesome people since then, make no mistake, but once Mike Morhaime and fucking Chris Metzen are gone, there's no coming back from that, I'm sorry. Next to flee that obviously sinking ship was a dude named Dustin Browder. At Blizzard from 2005 to 2019, his official title was Game Director for StarCraft, StarCraft 2, and all its expansions. The reigning RTS veteran over there, until of course he left. You wanna know what a G this motherfucker was? His credits include Command and fucking Conquer, right? Not much more to be said. I'm sure any more RTS games Blizzard puts out will be just fine without this guy. And just when you were about to say, oh, but wait, Jeff Kaplan, your boy Tig Old Biddies is still there. I'm sorry, but no. Turns out this dude decided he had had enough mere weeks ago. There at Blizzard from 2002 until, well, basically fucking yesterday, he was essentially one of the core people responsible for making World of Warcraft what it was when it was great, and more recently Overwatch. I don't give a shit about Overwatch, I hate games like that, but from what I understand, it's well liked by some people, so cool. The important thing though is that I love vanilla classic World of Warcraft, and this dude is one of the main reasons that it's as awesome as it is. And without him, the odds that it will ever be good again are pretty much zero. Yep, quite a sordid and sad affair if I do say so myself. Blink the tears out of your eyes, boys. I say again, if you still hold out any hopes for Blizzard getting their shit together and maybe reversing course from the downward spiral of self-destruction that Activision seems intent on forcing them into, you'd best check yourself. There's simply no one left to do it. And let me reiterate, same as Bioware, the majority of these people didn't leave video games or the industry, they left Blizzard. And why? Because there is no more Blizzard, there is only Activision. And though it makes my ruined, pathetic little heart weep openly, I can't blame them at all. Wow, that's our show. Turns out chronicling the slow, agonizing demise of one of your favorite pastimes is not exactly a circus of delights, who'd have guessed? No one ever accused us of being a paragon of optimism over here though, so not really a shock to anyone, I'd imagine. At any rate, thanks so much for chilling with us tonight, spending this little bit of your free time here. We love you today, we truly love you all the way. Stay tuned for our review of Resident Evil Village coming up in just a few days, right here on Degreelessness.